I want you to imagine something. You're lying in bed at the end of your life. No more chances, no more do-overs, no more games to play or masks to wear. And as you stare at the ceiling, there's only one question echoing in your mind. Did I live like it mattered? Sally, now I don't care how clever you are, how much money you made, or titles you racked up behind your name. Because here's the brutal truth. Money lost can be regained, but time only runs in one direction. And you don't get today back. Not now, not ever. And that's terrifying, but it's also liberating. Because it means this moment, the one you're sitting in right now, carries an unspeakable weight. It means this life, this flawed and fragile flicker of existence, is all you've got. And that should shake you to your bones. I've sat across from men and women who thought the next promotion would save them, who gambled relationships for bank accounts, joy for status, peace for applause. And when the applause stopped and the bank account filled up but the house stayed empty, then they realized they'd climbed a ladder that leaned against the wrong wall. Okay, Ika, there's nothing wrong with striving. There's virtue in work. But if you make material success your God, don't be surprised when it demands everything in return. Your time, your integrity, your soul. It's a poor master. It offers no forgiveness, and yet we need something to aim at. You can't live aimlessly, so what do you aim at when you strip away all the false gods? Responsibility. That word terrifies people today, but it's the only thing that gives life meaning. Carry a load. Start with what's in front of you. Kick up your damn suffering and march forward, not because the world is fair, McCatry, Jan Frischman, but because that's how you make the world bearable. That's how you turn chaos into order, by facing it voluntarily. Eyes open. Or you don't need to be a genius. You need to be someone who says, Kara, this is my mess, and I'll clean it up. This is my fear, and I'll face it. This is my life, and I will live it. Not perfectly, but courageously. Keynote. See, the hero isn't the one who's never afraid. The hero is the one who acts anyway. You're not meant to be... You're not meant to be safe, you're meant to be strong. You're meant to step into the unknown, into the fire, and come out more than you were before. But that doesn't happen by accident. You've got to decide right now. Because this life doesn't wait for your hesitation. There's no guarantee of a second chance. So I say this to you, not as a lecturer, not as an author, but as someone who has stood in the rubble of meaninglessness and chosen to build anyway. Live like it matters. Speak the truth. Shoulder the load. Fight the dragon, because this life, this one life, is all we have. And it's enough if you're willing to live it with your eyes wide open and your soul set on fire. Certainly. Here's an expanded version of the first keynote, staying true to Jordan Peterson's rhetorical style and philosophical tone. Whoa. I want you to consider something so obvious we often fail to grasp it until it's too late. Time is not a renewable resource. You can fracumber debbing and passimis mind stay. You can lose your house, your job, your friends, your health, and with effort, with luck, with some grace, you might get those back. But time, when it's gone, it's gone. That's the cold, immovable fact we don't want to look at. But we must. There's a kind of quiet tragedy in the way people sleepwalk through life. As if they're rehearsing for some grand performance that never comes. You see it in the way they postpone difficult conversations, defer meaningful action, and delay becoming who they are capable of being. Next week, they say, when I have more money, when I have more time. Quote, but time doesn't wait for your schedule. It passes, it devours. It doesn't care whether you were ready or not. I've spoken with people in their 40s, their 60s, their 80s, people who thought they had decades ahead of them, People who thought they had decades ahead of them, only to wake up one morning with aching regret and the suffocating awareness that most of life had slipped by while they were making other plans. Ellie, think about that. Imagine how it feels to realize that you've been living in postponement, in hesitation, in paralysis, while the days were quietly counting down. We live as if there's a real life waiting for us somewhere just beyond the horizon. We say, once I get out of this job, once the kids are older, once I feel more confident, but that horizon keeps moving. The real life never comes because this is the real life, this moment, this breath. This morning where you struggled to get out of bed and look yourself in the mirror, that's it. That's where you meet the eternal. Here, there's a profound idea in Christian theology, and it's not unique. Taught to Christianity, that eternity is not some far off, some paradise waiting in the sky. Eternity is nested in the present. Eternity touches time wherever we meet the moment fully with awareness, with responsibility, with courage. When you waste time, because if you don't treat time as sacred, you will suffer. Not the loud kind of suffering, but the slow, creeping existential kind. The kind that wakes you up at 3 a.m. whispering, "What am I even doing with my life, Frank?" So what do you do about it? You pay attention. You recognize that every day is a gift and a responsibility. You live like your actions matter. Because they do. You treat the minutes with reverence as if they belong to something greater than you, because they do. Now, this isn't just motivational fluff. It's the harsh, beautiful reality of being a finite creature in an infinite universe. Your time is your life. And your life is now. So the only question really is, what are you going to do with it? Certainly. Seer. Here's the expanded version of the second keynote, in the style of Jordan Peterson, rich in metaphor, personal reflection, and philosophical depth. We live in a culture that worships the golden calf of material success. It's as subtle. It's not shouted from the rooftops, but it's everywhere. In the ads, in the algorithms, in the quiet conversations where people measure their worth in salaries, square footage, and status. Updates. And I'm not here to demonize money. It's necessary. It's a tool. And in some cases, it's even a reflection of competence and effort. But when money becomes your primary aim, when it takes the place of meaning, something essential in your soul begins. Let me tell you something I've seen over and over, both in my clinical practice and in the lives of people I speak to across the world. You can be winning by every external metric and still be collapsing internally. You can have a 6-figure income, a designer home, and 1,000 followers applauding your every move, and yet feel like a hollow man living a performance rather than a life. Because here's what happens when you make material gain your highest value. You begin to lie. You lie to others, and worse, you lie to yourself. You justify decisions that erode your integrity. You cut corners. You smile when you want to scream. You make compromises so small, that you don't even realize you're falling until you look up one day and you don't recognize yourself. I had a client, brilliant man, successful entrepreneur, built a company from the ground. Made more money by 35 than most people dream of. But he came into my office with dead eyes and clenched fists and said, "I have everything I wanted. And I hate my life." That's not rare. That's common. That's epidemic. And you know why? Because we were not built to chase shiny things. We were built to grow, to sacrifice, to take on responsibility, and to serve something beyond ourselves. You strip that away, and you're not left with freedom. You're left with emptiness. The problem with making material success your goal is that it never ends. There's always someone richer, always something newer, always another rung on the ladder. And as long as your self-worth is tied to that chase, You'll be running yourself into the grave with a smile on your face and a scream in your chest. And I'll tell you something even darker. The more you succeed in that game, the more the people around you applaud. And that applause, that's the most dangerous drug there is, because now you're trapped. Now you have to keep performing, you have to keep winning, because if you stop, what are you then? And that's the tragedy. You end up living not for yourself, not for your values or your family or the future, but for appearances, for numbers on a screen, for the envy of people you don't even like. So I ask you, what are you sacrificing for your success, and is it worth it? Ali, because at the end of the day, your soul knows when you're lying. It keeps the score, whether you want it to or not. And no amount of luxury, no brand, no applause can drown out the voice that says, you traded truth for comfort. You chose the easy lie over the hard truth. Guys, we are spiritual beings. We are meaning-seeking creatures. And if we do not serve something higher, if we do not aim our lives at what is true and good and worthwhile, then we will serve whatever screams loudest. And right now the scream of materialism is deafening. Ali, but that voice in you, that quiet, insistent whisper that says, quieter whisper of failures. This isn't enough. There's more to life than this, and quit sot. That voice is trying to lead you somewhere real. Don't ignore it. Don't drown it in consumption. Don't sell your soul for a currency that cannot buy it back, of course. Here's the expanded version of the third keynote in the style of Jordan Peterson, philosophically grounded, emotionally charged, and spoken with urgency. There's a notion we've lost in the modern world, and we've lost it at great cost. The idea that responsibility is not a burden. It's the path to meaning. We live in an age that tells people to pursue happiness. ... Responsibility. Responsibility is what gives life its weight, its texture, its purpose. It's the structure that holds the chaos at bay, and without it, people fall apart. Not all at once, not dramatically, but slowly, silently. You can see it in their posture, in their eyes, in their addictions. They drift, they numb themselves. They look for distraction. Why? Because they lack a load to carry. Cappy, one of the things I've said countless times, and I'll say it again, here is that you need to find the heaviest load you can bear, a high havers strain, and bear it. That is not cruelty. That is salvation, because the alternative is nihilism. The alternative is that nothing matters, that you're just a speck of dust in a meaningless universe, and you might as well just entertain yourself until you die. And that thought, that's the kind of thought that leads people into despair and worse. I've had patients, bright, articulate, capable people who were drowning in anxiety and depression. And more often than not, they weren't suffering because they had too much to do. They were suffering because they had nothing worth doing. They weren't overburdened. They were under-challenged. They were untethered. They lacked aim, and so the question becomes, what are you willing to take responsibility for? Not what do you want, not what's easy, but what are you willing to suffer for? Because anything meaningful requires sacrifice. There is no love without vulnerability. There is no achievement without discipline. There is no maturity without pain. Now people push back on this. They say, why should I take on more than I have to? Life is hard enough. Coplodot. But that's precisely the point. Life is hard. Suffering is baked into the structure of existence. You can't avoid it. So the question isn't whether you'll suffer, but whether your suffering will be in service of something noble, or whether it will be senseless and soul-crushing. Our responsibility is what transforms suffering into meaning. It's what redeems it. It's what says, yes, This is hard, but I will carry it because it matters. 'Cause that's what a father says when he gets up at 5 a.m. to go to a job he hates to feed a family he loves. That's what a mother says when she chooses to stay another day, even when every fiber of her body is exhausted. That's what a person says when they choose to do what is right instead of what is easy. And let me tell you, when you voluntarily take on responsibility, when you choose to shoulder the weight instead of waiting for someone else to do it, you don't become crushed. You become stronger. You become more resilient. You become someone other people can rely on, someone your future self can respect. Oh, it's in the act of standing up straight with your shoulders back, not metaphorically, literally, that you signal to yourself and to the world that you are ready to carry the load. That you are not a victim of circumstance, but a participant in the battle of life. That you are not waiting to be rescued, you are becoming the rescuer. And it starts small. Clean your room. Fix what you can fix. Say what you mean. Tell the truth. Stand up for something, even if it costs you. Especially if it costs you. That's the path. That's the way out of chaos. Responsibility is the antidote to despair. It's the antidote to bitterness, resentment, and self-contempt. It's how you build a life you can be proud of, not because it's easy, but because it's earned. Certainly. Here is the expanded version of the fourth keynote, written in the voice and cadence of Jordan Peterson, laced with symbolic language, psychological insight, and mythological weight. You might not realize it, but you are living a story, and not just any story. A hero's journey. You might scoff at that. I'm not a hero. You might think, I'm just trying to make it through the day. Quit out. But that is exactly where the heroic path begins. Not with grandeur, not with fanfare, but with suffering, doubt, and the decision to move forward anyway. Oh, the great myths. The ones that have shaped civilization. They weren't written to entertain. They were written to orient, to tell you something fundamental about the nature of life, and more importantly, the nature of you. And if there's one thing they all have in common, it's this: the hero confronts chaos, the unknown, the monster, the dragon at the edge of the map. Now, chaos doesn't always look like a fire-breathing beast. Sometimes it's the anxiety that gnaws at you in the quiet. Sometimes it's the addiction you can't shake. Sometimes it's the grief you've buried for years, or the lies you told yourself just to keep going. Chaos is what you